Hello, young one. You are going to be listening to the story of Sans and his tragic death.
Yeah, he was a good guy, but that human, Kara, she wanted revenge on him.
Yeah, she was evil. Even I had to run from her house to not get killed.
Hey guys, are we talking about that genocide child? Hey guys, I'm awesome, yay!
And Sans and Papyrus.
A latest news report from my fabulous show says that Kara is now in captivity, and Papyrus is eating some spaghetti. Also, the fanfiction.net website has fabulously updated on some fanfic of Papyrus and Fabulous Me. Nope, no shipping of my brother here.
Did someone say my name? Just kidding.
A skeletal figure stood on a cliff, the wind whistling through the underbrush behind him. He turned and walked back to the cave where he lived. His brother, Papyrus, was already sitting down, dinner set up.
Hey brother, I've got dinner set up and I polished your bones,
he shouted in a shrill voice.
Thank you, Papyrus. I'll be there in a second.
Sans, the younger one, replied in a deep, grunting voice. He shuffled over to the room where he slept. He looked out the window and closed the blinds. He shuffled back to where his eccentric brother was waiting for him.
Okay, I closed the door,
he shrieked, staring at his brother with empty black eye sockets. They sat down in their bone seats. A stone stalagmite with a bone tablet laid across it was set up as a table. They had been hiding in the cave ever since news had spread of a human child wearing a striped shirt was murdering every monster that had gotten in its way. Papyrus, the older, hyperactive brother, blew on a spaghetti and gulped it down. He wore a red scarf and a white chestplate covering his bones. He wore blue tights that covered his pelvis, and his spine showed through right below his chest piece. Sans wore a blue hoodie and black shorts. He also wore slippers wherever he went. He also kept his hands in his pockets unless he was fighting. He had a thick skull and a wide smile. He constantly made horrible puns, which were always about skeletons. Papyrus, however, hated puns and loved puzzles.
Hey brother, what do you call a skeleton covered in snow? A numbskull.
Sans joked to Papyrus.
No! No puns at all, Sans! I will run my funny bone through you, and like your puns, it won't be funny!
Papyrus shouted.
Dude, that's a pun in itself. Anyway, it's time for the training session with Undyne,
Sans said, getting up from his seat.
Again? But it's so boring. I don't want to see the old woman again. Referring to Alphys.
Papyrus shouted, running to his room. Sans got up, sighing. He rolled his eyes and slowly walked towards his room. Opening the door, he said,
Papyrus, if you won't want to go, then don't go. But when I come back, you'll get beaten.
His eyes flew in the back of his head, and he swiped his hand across his left eye. A blue iris with a small black pupil appeared, flaming with a blue aura. Bones with the same aura floated in the air, threatening to be thrown. Sans' skeletal hand lifted, the same blue flame as everything else surrounding it, and so did Papyrus.
Okay, I'll go, but don't blame me if Alphys is there again,
he shouted, struggling to get out of Sans' hold. They both relaxed and crept out of the cave. The brothers walked along a well-worn path, slowly walking as to not show any tracks. They made it to an abandoned mine shaft, and what seemed to be a drop to your death. Papyrus leaped down, followed by Sans, and then both made their way down to this drop to a secret opening on the left, kicking up a cloud of dust. They both landed and continued to walk, as if the fall didn't hurt at all. A dog head poked out of the ground, and all fluffy and white. Suddenly, it emerged from the ground like a diglet, and showed its absolutely massive armored body. He held a spear in one hand, his huge knuckles wrapping around its shaft neatly. In a gruff voice, he told the duo,
You two going? Anywhere? Mistress Undyne and Alphys are in the dining room. Hey, Greater Dog, can you lead us there?
Sans asked as he approached the big dog.
Sure thing,
he replied. The big guard led the brothers down a long aisle, because everything in the other world was long, and entered a relatively long corridor with rooms on each side. They entered a long third one, turned left, and went through a long opening, climbed up a long ladder, turned right 3 times before turning left, walked through a few long, deadly puzzles, spent an hour trying to solve one puzzle, ate some long spaghetti, and walked down another long corridor, just to turn at the second to the last left and walk into a long door.
Are we finally there yet?
Papyrus shouted impatiently. He ran into the room to find the Undyne Papyrus is So Cool fan club, and the one member, the monster kid, sitting on a toilet. His yellow, scaly skin went down to his armless body and to his tail, which was hanging off the side of the seat, and his striped shirt was up, his pants down, and his feet swinging back and forth until he realized that Papyrus was staring at him in utter silence. What are you doing here? He asked. Then his eyes started to shine and he smiled widely. Are you perhaps here to join the Papyrus So Cool fan club? Oh, I've waited for this moment for so long. Wait, are you the Papyrus? He stopped talking in confusion, seeing that Papyrus and the others were gone. The greater dog realized that he had skipped a left when he weren't supposed to. Why you? Papyrus shouted in indignation. They finally made it to the dining room and saw Undyne and Alphys having a romantic dinner. Sans and Greater Dog hid behind a pole, while Papyrus continued walking. Hey, are you two? Sans dragged him back into the shadows, hiding his brother from sight. Hey, did you hear something? Undyne asked as she looked around. Alphys saw this as a chance to look at her phone and ask on the internet what to do if your friend just said, hey, did you hear something? A few replies in return all said, just smooch already and get it over with. That was Papyrus.
Yeah, it's taking forever and you're all alone anyway, so just do it.
Just do it!
That was Sans.
Bark. I agree with them.
That was Greater Dog. Why do you even ask? I'm right here. That was Undyne. Undyne. You didn't see anything. Alphys stuttered, flabbergasted, and desperately tried to hide her phone from sight. Well, do you want to try it? Undyne asked, embarrassed. It won't hurt, I promise. She leaned forward and pursed her lips, pushing her chair back as she stood. Alphys did the same, taking off her glasses. And they were about to make contact. Papyrus struggled free of Sans' hold and walked out. All right, it's time to train. Alphys, get out of here, he shouted, his voice echoing around the entire room. Suddenly, a crash could be heard from the room above them. Suddenly, Mettaton X crashed through the roof of the hall and suddenly rushed into the door.
Wow, way to ruin the moment, Papyrus. I was looking forward to a smooch,
Mettaton said, smirking while posing. Well, look who's talking, Papyrus responded. He was gonna roll his eyes if he had any. He walked up to the other monster and shoved a plate of spaghetti in his mouth. Unfortunately, Mettaton had a robotic mouth in which if he was in danger, the jaw would lock on and immediately close to brace for impact. Then he turned and pushed his own button, retransforming into the normal old square that everyone, almost everyone, knew and loved. Suddenly a ring surrounded from behind him, and Alphys looked at her phone to see the message and immediately went red. Undyne looked over at the carnage at her phone, took it and chucked it across the room, nailing it to the wall with a spear. The wall cracked open and a giant shadow fell across the room in the shape of a Cerberus. But what came out was a Temmie. Hi guys, you fern hassing, Katema to join? She barked, wagging her tail. She walked back through the hole and brought in some cardboard paint and a brush. Her long hair swished as she lugged in a music box and inserted a dog-shaped disc. Feedback played and everyone covered their ears, or places where ears would be, before the actual song started to play. Papyrus covered one leg with a hand and one on his chest with the other, while Mettaton covered his screen. Sam looked at them, along with Alphys. The Greater Dog had left.
Bro, you do realize that's not where our ears are, right? Besides, we don't have any, so what's the point?
He asked, rolling his eyes as Alphys began to speak. Yeah, Mettaton, I thought I programmed you to be smarter, she stuttered.
Sans and Alphys, what are you still doing here?
Papyrus interrupted, shouting in Alphys' face. She turned to inch away out of the room, when a spear nearly impaled Papyrus.
Undyne, I thought we were buds,
he shouted in protest as she aimed another one at him. During the commotion, Temmie had built a stand and stood behind it, the top piece of the cardboard covered in messy yellow paint, and in blue word overlapping it, saying, Colleague, please buy some Temmie flakes to pay for money for my colleague.
By the way, Undyne, Alphys, what was so embarrassing on that phone you had to destroy it?
Sans asked, cocking his head to one side. Alphys stopped in her tracks, missing her phone. However, her face flushed at the mere thought of what had been seen on the small screen. She started to sweat. Whatever are you talking about? Right, Undyne? She stammered, winking at her friend. Undyne proceeded to rigorously nod up and down, now gone from her blue self to a completely red monster. Sweat beaded her forehead. She couldn't find the words to speak. However, Alphys was not staring at her anymore, but staring as Mettaton went over, and with his smart programming, picked up the phone, and quickly fixed it. Mettaton's face flashed up with light and greeted with the sight of, "No, not fit for kids." Toriel, way to ruin the suspense. I was looking forward to good on that phone.
Whoa, I tripped. Oops, I accidentally turned back on the phone.
Asgore!
The robot fainted, dropping the delicately fixed machine on the ground. Papyrus picked it up and surprisingly did not get embarrassed. Sans, what is fan-fiction? Sounds interesting, he shouted, tossing the phone to Sans, who approached it with cautious, shaking hands. Lifting the phone, he saw the embarrassing photo of drunk Alphys and Undine in the closet. He looked at Alphys, who hid her face, then to the strange red monster who pointed 50 spears at him, all of which were also red. Moaned Sans. Harmonized parrots. Sang Mettaton. What are we doing? Asked Papyrus, still singing in a melodious tone.
Hoi guys, does any of your people want food?
Timmy!
Flex available now?
Temmie barked. She flipped a sign on her head and walked around the room, crashing into everyone she got near to. Right before she was about to barge into the door of the room, Frisk swung it open, propelling Temmie right back into Papyrus. The human boar wore a tutu and wore ballerina shoes, all of which were fabulously hot pink. He walked up to Tem and sprinkled pixie dust on top of her hair, making her fall asleep. Papyrus screamed and ran up to them, hugging them in a tight embrace. Frisk sprinkled more dust into Papyrus's mouth, making him fall asleep. That's the end. It was sort of an abrupt ending. Really wished to see Sans die, which was advertised at the beginning, but that didn't really happen. Clickbait, Jake Paul, and we need to get Content Cop on here. Overall, 0 out of 10. No, actually, it's a hard decision. Like 3 out of 10, maybe. It was an okay story, but it wasn't one of Tofu's finest work, if we're being perfectly honest right now. So, yeah, I hope he continues in the future with his writing endeavors. And yeah, I mean, what else can I say about this masterpiece? Please continue this story. I want to see Sans die, as advertised at the beginning. Yeah, or I'll sick the Content Cop on you. So, yeah. Tofu, get on it, please. And the one member, the monster kid, sitting on a toilet. His yellow, scaly skin